He's third in the Cup 2 class, carrying one of our cameras around the circuit. Black Falcon team Zimmermann. Black Falcon, long-term sponsors of many things around the Nordschleife, but they have various teams carrying their colours. But he's lapping faster than David Yarn, who's leading the class. And I tell you, for the past decade or so, David Yarn has been, you know, the sort of yardstick, the benchmark, if you like, in this category. So that is impressive. It's good to have different names coming in and showing their hand. Okay, of course, either of those laps last time around was 2 seconds faster for Alexander Hart. We know someone could have moved out of the way to let the front runners like Max Verstappen come through, lost a bit of momentum, or they could have been caught behind other traffic. But you take each lap as it comes, and certainly that was good to see Alexander Hart showing some form. He's still down third in class. His next target is not too far ahead. It's the 948 Cup 2 entry. We've seen quite a lot of that in the course of the race, but yeah, he's hauling that in at the moment, and that's Noah Nagel-Diesk at the moment in that.
And a car that, well, actually, you say no,
it's not. It's Muller. Yeah. I beg your pardon.
Only because he's on an outlap now. So that driver change has just happened. Tobias Muller takes over the 948 car. They have gone through their full driver lineup very swiftly indeed. So that suggests to me that Tobias Muller might even be doing the closing stint. But they've done a lot of stops. You know, Carlos Rivas started the race. They were one of the group that pitted very early after only about 5 laps, which is still puzzling for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Noah Nagel-Diesk took over. That, again, feels like quite a short stint. And now Tobias Muller is in. So have they all just decided we'll shorten the stint? We're not that too concerned about where we finish, just to make sure that everyone gets some driver time? Or do they genuinely think this is a good strategy to be taking? Because I suppose you're spending less time in the pits, but at the same time, you know, when you map it all out from a net perspective, it's got to be slower than their fellow Cup 2 runners. They're all quick drivers in that car, though.
Well, that's the difference. I still can't quite work it out. You don't see Cup 2 class cars doing that. Maybe there is good reason, but I can't for now just work out what that is.
No, and I'm not sure that their near rivals are necessarily doing that, although I notice Arne Hofmeister's now in the 921 as well. And Arne Hofmeister is the third driver within that too. The other thing that's just starting to enter my mind is, have the fuel tanks been closed up, i.e. are the Cup 2 Porsches now in the latest balance performance got nothing like the fuel reliability or fuel mileage that we are used to them having over the last 5 or 6 seasons? So,
that's a very good point. You have to keep on your toes with all of that.
But they're nowhere close to an SP9 stint length, if that is the case now. We're talking 5, maybe 6 laps at best, and then the cars have to come in. But that might be a deliberate decision by the organisers to make sure that the Cup 2 cars aren't in the way and tripping up the SP9s.
55 seconds is now the gap between Max Verstappen, he's in a hurry, and then Frank Slipper. So the Emil Frey Racing Ferrari just bashing out quick laps, and there was a sector midway through the 25-kilometre last lap in one of the 5 timing sectors alone, 6 timing sectors, 5 seconds gained in that point. That's the equivalent of taking a second in one of the timing sectors around a normal Grand Prix length of track. But the lap times, well, they've fallen to 8 minutes 13 last time around for Max Verstappen. No, it's not a crisis, because he hasn't suddenly lost all the pace, because remember, he's lapped 7 minutes 51. That is simply yellow flag areas. We've had some recently at Flansgarden just being cleared. Flansgarden is about 2/3 of the way around the lap, where it's really serious. Fabulous stretch of track, so many fabulous stretches, but that bit through Brunchen, Flansgarden, then over to Schwalbenschwanz, it is very, very quick and very, very twisty. Factor in as well, if you will, track is going up and down, and I think this is the key reason to why Max Verstappen wants to come and race here.
I will say that on lap 11 alone, Verstappen gained 8 seconds, though, and that has to be to do with yellow flags as well as his pure pace. I cannot believe Max Verstappen is 8 seconds quicker than a Nürburgring Nordschleife specialist such as Frank Stippler. So that is about Verstappen going through an area that was green as he arrived at it, and the yellows came in behind because of an incident that then slowed Stippler and Fabio Scherer to that extent, because they were very close on lap time. 8:18 from both the German and the Swiss. But Verstappen, and this is testament to him building a lead in the first place. If you gap the field, there is then the scope for you to arrive at a certain part of the racetrack in a different state of caution, let's say, compared to those following you, and it can get steadily worse. Equally, I still don't think 50 seconds is necessarily a done deal, because, you know, the racing gods can turn things around, and Verstappen might see a yellow flag area or a code 60, which by the point that Stippler arrives on it, it might be clear. So, got to stick with this, folks. We've still got over half the race still to go.
Yeah, the pendulum can swing in all sorts of directions here in the Nürburgring Langstrecke, often down to weather, but equally just down to an incident. It could be the two slowest cars in the field, running in one of the junior classes, have a bit of door-to-door action, one puts the other one off, or whatever, one just goes off in that battle. Suddenly there's a slow zone, and it could just work in your favour. Not many forms of racing have it like this, with the consequence of such a long lap. It really makes such a difference. But when it's been clear, green flag lap, we know the fastest lap of the race, the moment, still in the hands of Max Verstappen, 7 minutes 51. The last few laps have been very, very busy indeed for them, because of incidents around the circuit. The pace has dropped away, but every time it's clear, Max Verstappen is eking out a bit more of a margin over the better place, those two Hout Racing Mustangs. Frank Stippler, who is nobody's fool around the Nürburgring Nordschleife, he'll be making that Mustang go as fast as it can, but at the moment, it's not fast enough to challenge.
Sie sagen, es ist nur ein Auto, aber wir sagen, es ist Herzblut, Schweiß und Perfektion. Denn wenn du schraubst, dann zählt jeder Millimeter. Dann bist du in deinem Element. Du willst mehr als nur fahren. Du willst es fühlen. Die volle Kontrolle. Eine optimale Straßenlage. Wir wissen genau, was dich antreibt. Denn wir teilen die gleiche Leidenschaft. Egal ob auf der Straße oder auf der Rennstrecke. Wir sind immer an deiner Seite. Wir sind H&R. Offizieller Partner der Nürburgring Langstreckenserie.
Seitenreifen. Hol dir jetzt dein eigenes Motorsporterlebnis nach Hause. Dein Online-Shop für Simracing-Hardware und Zubehör. www.simraceshop.de
Liebe Fans,
Lovely fans,
besucht uns auf unseren Social-Media-Kanälen.
follow us.
Auf Facebook, Instagram.
YouTube und TikTok.
Willkommen bei der NLS.
Renhofer. There's a couple of Renhofers in the entry this weekend. Raphael, who drives the 191. ADAC Barbarossa Price live from the Nürburgring Nordschleife. And in the Global Broadcast Centre, it's me, Johnny Palmer, together with Bruce Jones. Very much enjoying this fight for, well, mainly second and third, because Verstappen's checked out and he's almost a clear minute ahead. It's 52.4 seconds the last time they crossed the line. That's at the end of lap 13. That's the number 6 Mustang of Frank Stippler. He stays at the wheel of car 6, been there from the start, and that incredibly impressive rise from 13th position up to second after probably only the first 3 sectors of that opening lap. Vincent Kolb still to come in that car, but we'll get beyond half distance, I'm sure, before Vincent takes over. Now there is a car running slowly, the 321. That might be the end of the Dottinger Hoor, actually. Difficult to tell from the tighter shot, but 321 Audi is the Gorian RT by Sharkey racing car. And the driver of it, who is Wolf, doing a good job in trying to just park it in a safe location. He's found a marshal point. It's actually a fire marshal point indicated by the orange end to the Armco. But now testing the rear view mirrors, because there's had 2 separate attempts here at trying to get it into the overlap, and therefore if he can get it into that little safety space, it might be that the yellow flags on the lead up might be able to be withdrawn as well.
Well, trying to reverse into the gap between in the cut in the barriers, but I think he's going to have one more attempt coming forward. But again, it sometimes just goes to prove how little visibility you have out. Oh, and he moves forward, then suddenly a course vehicle pulls in front. There was nearly a little bit of contact. That's going to hook up with him, I presume, and then tow him away. So that's a good idea. Good job from the driver, Jens Wolf, though, to try and tuck it away to safety, but they'd rather get him back to the pits, and you never know, could actually rejoin the race. But something amiss. You're quite right. There's lots of markings on the circuit. People have been known to get on and draw the names of their favourite drivers at various points around the track, and at certain points, these are around middle part of the lap. Whipperman and corners like that, where you can get a bit of air in the car. People put land here, another little quitch, because there are various points around the Nordschleife where we can get all 4 wheels off the deck. And then, of course, you're normally met immediately by another corner, so it's not always the best of ideas. And certainly when people do what we call tourist laps, so they turn up, pay their money, and get to drive around the Nordschleife. Yeah, it seems incredible, doesn't it? They certainly have corners that you do need to learn. Best thing is do a sighter lap or 2 before you start to open up the pace. But I really urge anyone with racing blood in their veins to, at some point in their life, make their way to the Eiffel Forest, here to the Nürburgring, and have a go around the circuit. And for a lot of you, you won't believe it. And back in COVID, when racing was largely digital until we got cars back on track, a lot of people looked at the digital Nürburgring Langstrecken series, sim racing series, and couldn't believe it was actually a real track. They thought it was made up of various sections of other great circuits around the world. It is real. It's very, very real. Trust me.
Just catching sight prior to the 500 Manhattan Wheels BMW of the WNS Motorsport Porsche 718 Cayman, currently being driven by Leon Duca. And Duca is a teammate of Joshua Bednarski and Laurens Stegman in the other Porsche, which started from pole position. So you've got 961, which is one part of the WNS Motorsport entry. 962 is a pro car, and that car led Group 2 away at midday this afternoon. Cup 3, not Cup 2, but Cup 3 is still being led by, bear with me as I scroll up the screen, yeah, still that 962 car. So they led away in the WNS Motorsport car and have stayed there since then. Lorenz Stegman, who has been putting most of the lap times in. It just shows that the lap time set in qualifying this morning was not a fluke to have stayed there at the head of a very competitive class. Heiko Eichenberg trying his level best to get close to that car, but the separation between the two in Cup 3 is about 20 seconds.
Right, some cars coming in for a second pit stop, including Klaus Appelen. Bear in mind, he's planning to do the whole race solo for a driver who was born in 1960, so let's do some maths and call him 65 for sake of argument. White and red, running still with the Fricadelli Racing livery on board. Is he going to do the whole race, or is he going, I'm just going to do the first couple of hours and have a spot of lunch. But Clausen loves this. He's invested so much in his racing career in the Nürburgring, but his Ferrari being pivoted around, so I would suggest he's not planning to get out just yet. So 2 hours of racing or thereabouts, 2 hours and 6 minutes remain. But however, of course, if you're talking Ferrari 296 GT3s in this race, you have to talk about Max Verstappen. He'll probably be coming in next time around, or possibly the time after. Normally have a 7-lap opening stint. That is precisely what he did. An 8-lap secondary stint, which will take us up to 15 laps. But the first of the cars that came in from the top class of this race, the SP9 class, on the at the start for the first round of pit stops was number 9. That's the one that Fabio Scherer has got up into 3rd place. He's artificially, if you will, closer to 2nd place that Frank Stippler in the sister car, but that first pit stop for him was shorter. So in terms of real pace, Frank Stippler has got the advantage, but we will see. But I would expect Scherer to be in from 3rd place next time around.
Good lap times from all those cars, in actual fact, whereas Verstappen, well, he wasn't hanging about, still got beneath the 8-minute marker. So very similar pace being shown now by those top 4 cars as Abelan's pit stop continues. Other cars peeling off at the end of their latest stints include the 2 I've just mentioned leading Cup 2. So the 900 and the 901 cars are in. It's going to be a bit longer before the Cup 3s arrive on the scene, though. Equipe Vitesse Audi back out again. In fact, that car is not on an outlap. It's working lap 14 currently with Heinrich at the wheel. That is one of the SP9 AM cars. And it didn't exactly struggle in qualifying earlier on, because you have to always take into account the driver makeup of car 50 and others in the SP9 AM division. But they weren't in the top 20, for example. Now that car is in the top 20, however, and 3rd in SP9 AM. So chasing down the Abelan Ferrari and Christoph Breuer's 786 Renazzo Lamborghini.
Yeah, that's running well, the Renazzo car, 6th place overall. Right, last time around, Max Verstappen got very close to his best lap of the race. He was 7/10 of a second down, so that made it 7 minutes 52.2. This lap, lap 15, is probably the one he brings it into the pits. But otherwise, that will probably be his best tilt at improving on his fastest lap. But there were yellows at various points around the circuit. Now I think we're clear, we're green the whole way around. But certainly Max pressing on big time. And again, bit by bit, just dropping Frank Stippler, who's running 2nd for Ford in the Hout Racing Team Mustang, who in turn is just easing away from Fabio Scherer. But Scherer should be in for his 2nd pit stop at the end of this lap, just waiting for that to go onto the board.
Well, it was an excellent 2nd sector from Verstappen, quicker than anybody else has managed in the race so far. So that is a new fastest lap. No, sorry, not new fastest lap, but nevertheless, a 7:52 is significantly quicker than the 3 cars in the race. The 900 car, which is the Hart-driven, or now Rosenberg-driven Black Falcon Team Zimmermann Porsche. So Hart got out, Mike Rosenberg taking charge. And, well, what about the fight between the 2 Cup 2 Porsches? As they both pitted, there was less than half a second between them. And I just wonder whether they re-emerged basically together, but this time with 901 up ahead, reaching the end of the Hatzenbach section now. And towards Kiddelbacher Hohe, which is the racetrack going over the public road. And now Flugplatz, the double right-hander. But that looks suspiciously like Grutter and Rosenberg have switched positions in the pit stop.
Yeah, absolutely concur with that. Right, the car that pitted first from the top class at the end of lap 6 has come in again after lap 14. So we reckon they'd do an 8-lap secondary stint. They absolutely have. So next time around we'll have Max Verstappen and Frank Stippler in. But Fabio Scherer has brought in the number 9 and has hopped out. And that leaves Dennis Fetzer or Jan Mardenborough to get on board. I think it's Dennis who's getting. I just need to see around the high upper edges of the driver's seat. We'll find out when it goes back out. But for Hout Racing Team, owned by Hubert Hout, based just across the road in Moyspach, they've been such staunch supporters of this series and all GT racing for time immemorial. But they've latched on with Ford, and certainly bringing that blue oval rumble has been something very, very popular with the German fans at the Nordschleife.
Pit stop ongoing then, and an indication of the fuel hose with its trigger at the end. So again, fuel flow is tricky to govern up and down the order. One or two, well, one fuel pump is always going to be the temperamental one, I suppose, and in order to ensure that you get the consistent amount of time being served in the pit stop, then these are all timed visits to pit lane. This Mustang, I'm sure, similar to the sister car within Haupt Racing Team, on Yokohama tyres. So we haven't mentioned a different tyre manufacturer again, but the Advans being utilised by the big American cars, front engine with their 5.4 V8s, the Ford Coyote engine. And that is about to lurch back into life as well with a brand new set of tyres beneath it. Scherer having brought the number 9 car in, the number 9 car in by Fabio Scherer. Frank Stippler stayed out though, as away then goes the number 9 Ford. Two hours to go on RS3, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels, reaching half distance. On with significant frontal damage, and then a nose-to-tail action from the BMWs, one squirming a tad wide on the approach to Brunchen. But there's been no shortage of action all the way through the opening 2 hours, Bruce.
It's been fantastic. Again, it's lovely having a different mix of drivers at the front end of the field. To bring in a 4-time world champion is always going to draw some fresh eyes here. But again, it always strikes me when you look down through the field, there are class battles everywhere. Of course, you've got this enormous discrepancy in performance between the slowest cars in the field, which are effectively little more than road cars, up to the road rockets that are in the top class. But at the moment, the lead is, let's have a drum roll, just over a minute now. Max Verstappen ahead of the Frank Stippler driven Haupt Racing Ford Mustang. The sister Ford Mustang has pitted. That's made its second pit stop, and just waiting for update to see who took that over. Was it Dennis Fetzer or Jan Mardenborough? But again, they will make their final pit stop earlier, 1 lap earlier, one presumes, than the rivals, which will therefore mean their final pit stop has to be longer. But I think we'll revert to having 31 from 6 from 34, which is as it was in the first lap of the race. That'll be the Verstappen.com Ferrari at the front, the number 6 Ford Mustang from Haupt Racing Team, and the Walkenhorst Motorsport Aston Martin. Now up into 4th place overall, making it 4 manufacturers, is that Lamborghini Huracan that has really impressed very much today for Renazzo Motorsport Team. 4 mates in the top 4.
great to see as well that the scaffolding has been removed from the Nürburgring castle. That seems to have been renovated for have been renovated for much of the season, and sadly the ideal lines of that have been taken away from our vision, but it's all been removed. It looks like that was been a success therefore, and the eye-catching icon on the inside of the northern loop is returned. Here's the Ferrari from the lead of the race. Max Verstappen, Dolly Jacks going underneath, and indeed Chris Lullen just waiting to the left-hand side of the 31 Ferrari, ready to take it over.
Yeah, the young Brit, he might have wondered if he was going to get a go at all, but of course it's 4 stints in this race. The first 2 taken by Max Verstappen. He didn't lead from the start, but he led from the opening corner on the opening lap. Brilliant start from him. He'll get out. We'll see who gets to do the final stint. Maybe it's going to be 2 stints through to the end of the race. Here we are, just past the halfway point. Young Brit Chris Lullen getting on board, a serious racer in sim. That's how he came in contact with Max Verstappen, who loves sim racing a huge amount, and he's stepped up this time to his first full season of GT racing. He's only his 2nd season all. Did Radical racing, as you were pointing out last year, in the Radical UK Cup, Hackety UK Cup. But this season, GT World Challenge, he's proved he's one of the very, very quickest. Remarkable story. But let's see what he can do here. Johnny, he's never raced here on the Nordschleife before. He's raced here at the Nürburgring, but that's only in sprint 1-hour races. But the Nordschleife, much, much longer lap. 25 kilometres, much, much tougher lap. Really tight and twisty, 172 corners in all. You know what? So Max Verstappen's about to stay in. He's not got out of the car yet. Chris Lullen is waiting alongside. Normally there'd be a driver change by this point. All the wheels are off the car. He's passed in a drink. You know what? I think Max is going to do a hat trick.
No, I think that is Max stepping away, is it not? Yeah, they have a different gate. So
okay.
I thought that was Max out of the car. He was helping Chris get strapped in.
Okay, that would explain it. Maybe I was looking at something else on the car, but it wouldn't surprise me, quite frankly.
Just had a quick conversation going,
I'm having too much fun.
You can do the last stint, mate. I know we had that agreement at the start of the race, but just forget about that.
Yeah, whose name's on the side of the car? Who's called .com around here?
Yes.
No, it's more than likely it will be Chris, but I just looked away for a bit, and I still saw someone wearing with a blue, white and red helmet.
Yeah, similar helmet design, certainly similar race suit as well. Well, the full confirmation will be when the car leaves the pit lane and the timing system catches up with a potential driver change. Still plenty of people wanting to photograph, if it is Chris, now in that car, with photographers kneeling down at the road surface.
Oh, by the way, I didn't, I think, answer my own question. Who took over the second of the Hout Racing Team cars from Fabio Scherer? It's Dennis Fetzer. It's been the completest.
Yep.
So Jan Mardenborough should do the 4th and final stint. So fresh set of Michelins on the Emil Frey Racing Verstappen.com Ferrari. Normally competes on Pirelli when it races in the GT World Challenge. So the teams have to just become accustomed to these cars, and such a tyre war in the Nürburgring Langstrecken series. And Yokohamas are the ones on the 2 Mustangs, the Hout Racing Team, and plenty of other makes around. But back into the race goes the Ferrari that came in with a lead of north of the minute. It was 1 minute and 2 seconds, I think it was, before the pit stop. We'll see what it is afterwards, but it's not a race into the pits, a race out of the pits. Well, it is, but it's the pit stop has a mandatory time, and we have had even some of the top teams getting it wrong today. If you're short by, let's say, just 1.5 seconds, you have to come in with all that deceleration time, pit speed limit. You're going slowly, and you stop for another 1.5 seconds. So it costs you about 30 seconds for going down by just 1.5 seconds below the margin. So you just really got to keep your eye on it. But Johnny, you and I have been commentating on endurance racing and GT racing for many years, and every single race someone transgresses, don't they?
I mean, you know, the most experienced can still fall foul of that rule, and it just shows you how hard so many of the drivers are pushing. Teams can make mistakes as well when the time pressures of a stop clock are there, ever present. So still yet to, on our timing screen, trigger even just the out lap, but clearly the Ferrari is back in the race. What I'd ideally like is confirmation that there was a driver change.
He's out.
There we go. That's the confirmation I needed.
Yep.
The face of Max Verstappen deep in conversation with those at ML Frey Racing.
Yeah, because quite often you have to wait until the first timing interval around the circuit before it's confirmed to you, and around here that's about 5 kilometres or 4.5 kilometres or whatever. But anyhow, Max is out and he doesn't even have the decency to look as though he's got very hot and bothered. He's got that completely under control, and I think he's just reveling in this entirely different environment. The circuit is just what it is. It's just the most amazing stretch of tarmac in the world, even if it was completely level, had all these corners. But to me, the thing that really makes the Nordschleife is the vertical change, the topography here in the Eiffel Forest. And there really is appreciable up and down, vertical gain and loss, and that's why the lap just is endlessly interesting. And I'd love to hear Max's thoughts as soon as he gets a microphone in front of his face. But you know, a whole new bunch of fans, both regular NLS fans, getting to greet Max here. Of course, he did a race a couple of weekends ago, but this time, for the first time, having got that ring license, he's racing in the top class, and how coming in with a margin of a minute and more. Quite fantastic run from him.
And okay, he's done half the race, but bear in mind how much time that actually is. It's 2 hours. There's very rarely a Grand Prix that is that length of time. Think back to the recent Italian Grand Prix at Monza, which I think was the quickest Grand Prix in history.
Was it about an hour and 10 or something?
An hour and 13.
13, okay.
And 24 seconds to do 53 laps. That is a race that Max won. And yeah, he's just been at the wheel of that car. Okay, there was a pit stop partway through, so take away 3 or 4 minutes for the stop itself, but you're still talking an hour and 55 minutes to be at the wheel of that car. And the concentration levels have had to be as high, if not higher actually, than you might require in a Grand Prix, because you're not having to deal with traffic all the time in a Formula One race, whereas here there's all the corners to try and remember. There's where you are on the racetrack, there who you're racing with as well. So his brain will have been in a workout there.
It will. I'd say it's far better than having a session in the gym, because yes, I mean, things are coming at you from all angles. Oh, and it's fun, so why not do some more of it? I'm sure he will, but again, just a chance to see any car being driven around the circuit. You know, I could watch onboard laps all day long around the Nürburgring Nordschleife. It doesn't matter what class of car you're in, but when you're in one of the front-running cars, the sheer pace with which the corners come up at you, and more to the point, also some of the slower drivers who are doing their best in cars of, you know, definitely inferior performance potential, it's just always a changing scenario. And right now we do have, I think it's a car at the side of the circuit with a rescue vehicle looking to see if the barrier repairs. No, it's a simple tow, just hooking up with, I think it might have been a Honda. Running one of them, possibly a TCR class car or a production car, couldn't quite see. We went past, but then as soon as the cars get past that, the drivers look for the signals from the marshal's green flag. Off we go again, and you know, back up to pace. But of course, they have to back it off when they get to a zone of conflict or contact or barrier damage, and have to, you know. It's such a busy environment around the Nordschleife, but you just almost have to have an extra set of antennae, I feel, to be just constantly aware of potential problems up ahead, because we see it, and sometimes if ever you're looking down and you're seeing a helicopter camera shot, you see suddenly a car in a pack of 4 or 5 coming up, and someone maybe at the back of the pack sort of nearly locking up and clipping those in front because they've just been a little behind the curve in spotting the yellow flags. It's tricky. It really is tricky.
Now there's a big penalty handed out to the 939 Porsche. Yes, a 718 Cayman from Cup 3 for Andre Duvet, and that is after speeding in the pit lane was detected. So first of all, the car was under investigation, and it's now going to be a 30-second stop and go penalty for the 9th placed 939 Cayman. Duvet's name not actually listed, but he is the current driver, so whether he was the one that committed the crime, but he will definitely be the driver that has to serve that penalty. And you generally, well, on a normal length of track, you get 3 laps to respond to a penalty. It might be 3 laps here, but that, when you think about it, is about half an hour in order to dive into the pit lane. I suppose you get fewer chances past pit road in that spell. Double waved yellows now on the approach to Flansgarten, and the reason for that is not immediately obvious, but it might be around this next blind right-hander. It is indeed, and there are significant difficulties here. A car's been off at relatively high speed, so there's an intervention vehicle parked on the racetrack protecting it, as now the speed is quickened again by the 347 Toyo tyres with Ring Racing Porsche.
I actually thought the flag had come out just to warn the drivers there's now possibly could be sun in their eyes. The sun has finally broken through the clouds. It was stolidly grey. It was misty this morning, but it was just starting to brighten up. I looked at the clouds earlier. There are breaks in the cloud again. That's good. There you go, getting the sunshine. But thought of rain early in the race, but that has moved away. What have we got left on the clock? An hour and 45 minutes or so. So still plenty of racing. But the good news for Ferrari fans and Max Verstappen fans is Chris Lullum has hopped on board that number 31 Emil Fry Racing Ferrari and is doing just as good a job as Max has. That not to be too much of a surprise because we know he's very quick, but he's been racing a 296 GT3 Ferrari all season long in the GT World Challenge. So Lullum very, very much a rising star, but I am fairly sure that Max Verstappen enjoyed his 2 hours or so in the car. May yet come through to do the final stint. That's definitely an option on the table if he so fancies to maximise his time.
Keeping my eyes glued to the fight for position, where the 347 has now caught the AV Racing by Black Falcon Porsche number 902 that was started by Ryan Harrison. It's now driven by the Romanian racer Alexandru Vasilescu and potentially Leon Vasatila to still come in that car. Not sure whether Leon's already been in it, but that is a guest entry in Cup 2. But I tell you, those two cars, different classes entirely, but very evenly matched indeed as they head across the line together. All sorts of different aero as well. The 902 is a purebred Cup car, so terrific down the straights. That's probably why the car carrying the more aero wasn't able to get past it on the Dottinger Hoor. But now the 347 all over the back of the Romanian racer. 347 is in the hands of who now? It was started by Goulden. And
it's Santler.
Santler,
yeah.
Okay. Is that Tim Santler? Yes, it is. With Mark Henrici part of that lineup as well. And Santler is finally able to pick off Vasilescu on that run out of the Mercedes arena and down towards the cutout. But there are jostles for position everywhere you look at this phase on the Grand Prix track. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cars. Could be the opening lap again with so many at close quarters. Is that a repaired number 8 Audi? It looks like it's had quite a bit more bodywork added to it in the black colours, which is the more traditional paint scheme for the Jutta Racing Audi.
Yeah, no, it came out effectively, I think, 5 laps down or 4 laps down. It took a long way to repair. Remember, it was at the end of, was it the first lap or was it the second? But certainly front-end damage, and that took quite a while to sort out the radiator situation. But as I said, in this, when you know you've got potentially 4 hours of racing, you get your car fixed, you've still got 2 hours ahead. What do you do? It's rude to pack it into the transporter, so get back out on the track, and that's why the drivers come here. I mentioned the sun, it has gone away.
The outlap for Chris Lullum was 11.5 minutes, but we'll get a representative time this time around. 106.5 through the first sector is properly on it. It's only really Dennis Fetzer who manages a slightly quicker time through sector 1 in this phase of the race. We've got an hour and 3/4 still to go, and quite a bit of pressure on the 22-year-old from Tunbridge Wells now, taking over from Max Verstappen. But if he can get anywhere close to the 7:51.5 set by the 4-time champ, then Chris will relax later on, knowing that he's more than done his job. But with an advantage of north of a minute now, just needs to keep things calm, doesn't need to do anything stupid.
Yeah, but would Max accept that?
Well,
say, come on, press on. You know, Max isn't
true.
someone who's known to cruise towards the end of races, but I actually still fancy that Max is going to get in and do a third 1-hour stint. You know, it's a 4-hour race, 3 pit stops. The pit stops aren't rushed because there's a mandatory minimum time, which makes it safe. And also, one of the advantages here by having this longer pit stop, it's sort of made because you use fewer mechanics. It means the teams don't have to employ so mechanics, keeps the cost down. But if it's the same for everyone, that's absolutely fine. You talk about the nozzle fuel fuel filler. Of course, it's not the fast way, the high-pressure way you'd have in lots of other forms of racing. But again, it's a level playing field. But it's also about not stumbling in the pit lane. And every race in endurance racing, someone will get something wrong. As you said just recently, someone else being pinged for driver penalties. We've got some code 60s. It's towards the end of the lap. Brunchen has had a yellow flag and a slow zone. So these are the things that affect people setting their fastest lap time. You could do an absolutely brilliant lap, but partway round you find you've got to back off by 3 or 4 seconds or get behind traffic. But just waiting to see what Chris Lullen could do. Certainly his sector splits are looking tight. He's still stretching the margin over that number 6 Ford from the Hout Racing team. Vincent Kolb on board at the moment, but at the moment he doesn't have the answers. And it seems on his outlap, Kolb lost another 3 to 4 seconds on the race-leading Ferrari. So Ferrari haven't had a lot of success in the Nürburgring Langstrecken series. In fact, their biggest success on the German scene was not in this series, but in the Nürburgring 24 Hours a couple of years ago. But could well be about to change that, because certainly Emil Frey Racing and certainly Max Verstappen have done a storming job first half of this race. But already we're counting down hour and 40 minutes.
It's a full female pit crew for the number 146 BMW M4 and a full female driver lineup, of course. So Carrie Schreiner's going to get out of that car and Janina Schal taking over. They qualified in SP8T in 44th overall, but more crucially in SP8T, I think certainly inside the top few positions. There was a BMW ahead of them. And how many other cars from SP8T? It's difficult to tell because I don't have the... it might only be 2, maybe 1 or 2 cars ahead. I'm sure at some point the timekeepers issue a grid with the various categories split up, but all I have is the overall at this stage. But I know Carrie was caught by Patrick Simon on the grid with much excitement from her to get her teeth into another 4-hour race. Sometimes they run with as many as 4 drivers, but just the 2 this weekend. And they came into the pits provisionally on the podium, 3rd position for this BMW M4.
Yeah, such a great policy, this GT racing team in GT tyres. WS Motorsport run the car, but it's this all-female crew, all-female driver lineup. This must be about the 5th or 6th year, possibly even more. For a lot of years they were racing VW Golfs, but great to see them getting a little bit more performance under their right foot with this M4 GT4. And again, if you're looking at GT categories around the world, we call them something slightly different. We call them in the SP class here. SP9 is equivalent to GT3. But GT3 and the less extravagant-looking GT4 cars, of which the GT Motorsport competition car. Oh, a little bit of a twitch. Going into turn 3 on the outlap, suddenly Janina Schal, who'd just taken over that BMW M4 GT4, couldn't get the front end of the car to turn in, but somehow at the second bite of the cherry, she did. So there we are. That's the example of cold tyres on your outlap, and now pressing up at the early part of this lap when you're still on the Grand Prix circuit. Is a chance to really get the heat in your tyres, because where do you need it most? In the bit that follows on the Nordschleife. But again, just going back, I think it's always been such a great scheme. But GT4, less flamboyant in terms of the wing size and the aerodynamic aids on the car, down on performance in terms of grunt as well, but it's a very good feeder category. And a lot of people actually say do a really quick lap around a racing circuit. GT4 car with less downforce is actually slightly harder than it is in GT3. And for GT3, which is a category that was aimed not at the pro driver like Max Verstappen or Chris Lullen, but aimed at the gentleman driver or gentlewoman driver, often you have a pro-am lineup, and it really has the finance for the GT3 class has largely been based on people bringing in money and getting young drivers to race with them and guide them, and it has been supremely successful. But a lot of people start crafting GT4 beforehand, and again in the NLS, the SP8T class that runs the GT4 class cars is always very well supported. So it's a ladder, just like single seaters. You work your way up it, or in some cases down.
So Charles now, I think, getting that front tyre temp up, but it's very tricky to do in a rear-wheel drive car anyway, because the rear tyres on a BMW clearly are the driven wheels, so they will reach operating window far quicker than the fronts. But that is a net gain from their starting position. I was ferreting around for that, but they started 4th in SP8T and now run third behind Marek Bachmann's Aston Martin for Pro Sport Racing and the FK Performance Motorsport BMW M4 for Wustenhagen, number 187. We will get an idea as to Chris Lulham's pace in the not too distant future. He's heading through the longest sector now, which is sector 4. It's not a clear racetrack though, because Galgenkopf is affected by yellow flags, so too Schwabenschwanz. So the second of the carousels, the Kleiner carousel, and up until the right-hander that leads onto the Dottinger Hohe, still affected by caution, although as I say that, Galgenkopf looks like it's clear again. This might once more be a car that's moving on a flatbed. If that's possible. The flatbed's moving, the car's not.
Hopefully.
Yes. And what happens is, as that HGV is inching its way around the racetrack, then the yellows follow it. So we get quite a rapid stream of updates as the various marshal posts chop and change, with safety being the key.
Right, to give you an example of these rolling zones and the various slow zones around the circuit, the first flying lap from Chris Lulham, 8 minutes 33. So we're talking 40+ seconds down the best by Max Verstappen. But there's reason for that, very clear reason. It's the slower zones around the circuit. And hopefully now, as I think pretty much everywhere has gone green around the circuit, therefore we can race it at full pace all over again. We'll see what Chris Lulham can do, but certainly he didn't gain any advantage that I can see as yet over Vincent Kolb in the second place Mustang car number 6 from the Hout Racing team. However, that has yet to finish its lap, and the gap between them will be just over a minute, one would expect. It's about 1 minute and 5 before they hit all those slow zones, but as we pointed out, and we will continue to point out in this commentary, a slow zone can hit one charger and the next one further down the track it could clear in front of them, and suddenly they can gain a lot of time, or vice versa. Thus far in this race, there was one moment where I think the race leading Ferrari from Verstappen.com gained a bit of an advantage that was given to it, but in terms of its pace on every other lap, it deserves to be in the lead, and by quite a large margin, which is precisely where it is.
Yeah, no issue at all with the distance that the Ferrari has as an advantage. It was just how Max kind of attacked the race from the moment off, and we should be well used to that in his general approach to a Grand Prix as well. If there's an overtake to be done, if he hasn't qualified as the pole car, then get the overtake done almost by catching your rivals napping. And Christian Krognes could not hold back the Ferrari, which was right underneath that very large wing of the Vantage. Plus then there was the hit from a wayward Tim Heinemann onto the back of the Krognes Aston Martin, which didn't help matters, and all sorts of carnage in behind, which gave Max Verstappen the best possible start. Yeah,
one thing that's always very tricky, the damage didn't seem to be too bad to the Aston Martin, but of all the GT3 cars, it seems to be the most affected by contact with the rear. It has that massive diffuser that is vulnerable, has been over the years in GT3 racing. I don't think it's as bad as it used to be about, I don't know, if I say 6 years ago, it was probably 10 years ago when it was a very prominent diffuser on the tail end of the Vantage. And certainly when it was launched, a lot of people thought, lap 1, first corner, could be problems. But certainly Christian Krognes, when he came in, didn't seem too gutted and broken by any potential damage that happened. Turn 1, opening lap, Tim Heinemann getting it really slightly wrong. And what we have to just stress is that Tim was running in a Cup 2 Porsche, but they're very quick in a straight line, and off the grid it was good. He came from, I don't know, about half a dozen car lengths back, and just, he might have been caught out slightly by the way that Christian Krognes had to brake for the first corner, but he had to do so because Max Verstappen was in front, was sweeping across from the left-hand side of the track in his Ferrari, and maybe the Aston Martin braked a little bit harder than was expected by Tim Heinemann, but I think Tim's got a little bit over-ambitious. His car then went all the way across the track to the left-hand side, skirted with the gravel trap and rejoined, but did scatter the field behind it. Certainly bought the first 3 cars a bit of a margin, but ever since they've proved that they would have been pulling clear anyhow. So, but again, interesting days. Right, gap between first and second, still waiting for the Aston Martin to come through in second place. The Vincent Kolb Ford coming through in second place, but it's still going to be over a minute. 1 minute and 8 seconds is the margin between first and second now. So again, slight advantage to Chris Lulham. Maybe this time there won't be slow zones and we can see them pick up their pace. We'll see what the gap will be next time around.
Number one car still in the race, being the defending champion team, and it's Adrian Richney who is now driving that. Kevin Vambach and Sven Markert are the fellow drivers in the championship winning team, Adrenaline Motorsport, from last year. They're down in 5th position in the BMW 240i class, but it is a class that is currently being led by Van der Sanden in the P. Terting sports car. So that is John van der Sanden of the Netherlands, Anton Abbey and Yannick Reinhardt, the two other drivers in the 680. 7, did we say, 240i's this weekend. There's also a well-populated BMW 325i class. We start with 5 of those cars, 6 of those cars, and now down to 5 runners after an early retirement in the 325i's. BMWs of all shapes and sizes, very nearly. But Chris Lullum in his Ferrari completes the first racing lap. You mentioned the time. That was a lot to do with the amount of caution that was around, and we still do have at least one Code 60. In fact, it's 3 Code 60s officially, with slow zone now being introduced at Brunchen as well. It's been a little while since that was Flansgarten, wasn't it? Right-hander at Flansgarten, where there was a car off to drivers left. So maybe something fresh now. A new problem has occurred at that famous right-hander at Brunchen.
Yeah, so Brunchen, if you're looking at a circuit map, is not a great distance before Flansgarten, but to my mind, it's about the trickiest section of the track. You've gone through the carousel, the highest point of the circuit, Whipperman, but then it seems to sort of go on to fast forward as you approach Brunchen. The gradient change, the combination of corners are just, well, they're just outstanding and frankly quite frightening when you're doing a circuit lap. You know, you're taking your own competence around there with you, but certainly for the front runners, it's still a challenge, but it's just they're not quite mere mortals like the rest of us. Slow zone upgraded to Code 60 at Brunchen. We mentioned that fearsome right-hander, but normally when something like that occurs, it's because there is clear-up going on down there. And barrier damage, well, comes as no surprise when the barriers are so close to the most of the circuit, all the way around the Nordschleife. You know, car hits barrier may get damaged. You cannot continue with damaged barriers, so they will be dragged around, sections brought along behind a great big 4x4 Unimog, and they're very, very good. The crews on board there are getting them fixed as fast as they can, but it can mean you could have, you know, 3, even 4 laps, so you're talking the best part of half an hour while they're fixing them. But actually, you try getting your local builder to do it that quickly. I've never found one that can do it. Mind you, I've never asked for any Armco in my garden, now I think think about it, but
that's where you're going wrong.
Yeah, no, that's the problem.
Judging by your lawnmower driving, it might be a wise addition.
He's off again.
The 948 car chasing down somebody different again. I think that's the 919 up ahead of Robin Cherzanovsky. Certainly the right colours for that particular car. But that might mean that those cars are not on the same lap, therefore. 948 is Tobias Muller, and he's 47 seconds behind Arne Hofmeister, who now drives the Cup 2 leading Porsche for Mühlner Motorsport. BMW going through the cut-through on the Grand Prix circuit, trailing a bit of sill, it looks like, on the left-hand side. That's the 885 that has been in the wars. It is a class-leading car. Oh, the Schubert BMW, well, that was the one that was off the road, I seem to remember, when we were calling that from an aerial shot. So whether that's a scar from that incident or something entirely different.
I think it's actually just a little bit of trim hanging off there, because the car's running a very elaborate black and white sort of split livery, and it looks like it's actually just a bit of tape off the side. It's on the left-hand side of the car from the driver's point of view. Oh, actually, the whole panel beneath the door is loose, and some of the livery according, so they'll have to keep an eye out for that. There may yet be a black and orange flag for that. We talked of Fricadelli Racing being the meatball team, but some people have always called the black and orange flag, black with the orange circle in the middle, the meatball flag, but it's the warning that you need to come in and have something attended to, because there is a possible danger resulting from something that's hanging off your car. You certainly don't want broken bits flicking up into the face of chasing rivals. So we'll keep an eye out for that one. May yet be a warning flag.
2 wheels on the grass from, if that is Robin Chervzanovsky. Brave stuff then, heading through Silchen and Klostertal as that real significant left-hand kink, which requires a blend of the throttle. It's the Click, the Cypherung car, or online the Cypherung. So let's just check that is the 919. Typically that particular sponsor isn't featured on the entry list, but it's, as I say, the right paint scheme for that particular car. They have also just gone through and passed at significant speed the Cameron GT3 Cup car. By Cameron I mean Bill and Jim in their Cup 2 AM machine, which is so a Cup 2 car, but remember there are different layers to Cup 2, Pro and AM, and some Pro AMs as well. Now up towards Hoa Act, one of the Supras needed to be mindful that Tobias Muller wanted to get through. I have to say, Tobias Muller is so cool and calm in the cockpit of his car. I don't think how many laps he must have done around this place. So he's just taking everything in his stride, even though it is very, very busy out there.
Yeah, I think that's the ability. This must be the sort of the zone that Frank Stippler's in. He knows what's coming up. He's done every corner just endless times. So the circuit isn't the issue for some of the top drivers here, the ones with the experience. It's just the other elements that are added to the equation. But it means they've got more sort of mental capacity ready to handle those sort of variations that could lead to trouble. Double wave yellow flags just in front of one of the Camry cars, the Tobias Muller cars, so they don't know what's next, but they have to crack down the pace over a brow, round a corner, over another brow. So there's a yellow and red flag, just looking yellow and red. So someone's dropped something nasty and slippery on the circuit just before the moment where we've got Porsche Cayman. Two Porsche Caymans off on the left-hand side of the driver's point of view. Drivers go past, they wait for the signal. Where are they going to get the green flag to let them go all over again? Not for the next corner. Still looking at the marshal's post, still yellow and red flags. So there's a further incident next time around. Okay, this is the Brunch and Flansgaard issue, isn't it? 2 separate corners separated by a couple of corners in between, but once they got through there, the other side of Flansgaard, they can get going again.
And Muller now clears Chervzanovsky. I'm not convinced they were on the same lap anyway, but that might have been an element of Chervzanovsky just blending off the throttle as he picked the speed back up again to say, do you know what, I'm just going to lose you as a headache, as a distraction in the mirror. And the 948 car running second in Cup 2, keen to try and make up any portion of that 47 seconds that separates the front bumper of Tobias Muller's car from 48 Loesch Motorsport and the blue and white Arne Hofmeister-driven Mühlner Motorsport car that leads the class.
Cars being shoved back into garage at the moment. It's last year's championship winning team with their BMW wheel back. That's one with Maxell sponsoring from. I thought that was a message to our erstwhile race leader. Sell what? It's SE single L, friends.
Oh, yes.
But again, repairs under the right rear corner of the car. This is where the mechanics need to earn their keep. And if just look at how little space. Now they've kindly put the car up on jacks, so the mechanic can actually slide underneath the right rear corner of that number 1 BMW. Not racing in the top class, but this team won the championship last year. And just go back to the issue of points. You score points according to how many people finish or start in your class. And it's generally drivers for cars further down the order. This is running in the M240i BMW class. And if this one probably not going to win it today, but every variety of spanner and wrench being used under that one. But again, for example, 7 cars in their class. If they win, they'll get 7 points in the bag. And certainly it tends to be in the better populated classes. Yeah, more competitive perhaps, but the more people you beat, the more points you put in your pot across the course of this season. Spring through to autumn, every single weather condition imaginable will be experienced, of course, across the course of the season. But the NLS, the Nürburgring Langstrecken series, the long distance series, it's a test for the mechanics, Johnny, as much as it is for the drivers and the pit crew, because they have to be able to react to things that get broken and know how to fix them quickly. And the better teams have watched, and they've learned from example, how Audi really conquered the World Endurance Championship. But it's about a decade ago when they started just having they had special bags of tools for each appropriate job. clever, eh? Rather than fishing around. You've got, who's taken that spanner? They know, right, we're changing the right rear corner. Here's the bag of tools. Okay, you need a lot of tools, but it certainly saves time. And if you can save yourself 20 seconds, well, you'll do that in a race, wouldn't you?
You might need a spare garage as well to keep it all safe. But normally these days at Le Mans, for example, the paddock's continually getting encroached by the back of the garages, which just progress further and further out towards the fan area. Very tricky if you're a journalist to get anywhere close to the drivers these days, but that is the nature of Le Mans, I suppose.
Well, it is. You walk in through the garage, walking from the pit lane side, you go through what we traditionally think of as the garage, and then we started to have little rooms behind, which might be a room where a driver goes for a massage, but largely that's where the engineers sit with their banks of screens. And yet, as you say, you get to the back of the pit building, and then people put awnings up and semi-permanent structures. And if you're walking from the front to back, I mean, you feel the seasons might have changed by the time you got to the far end. But certainly, yeah, it's harder to get through. But rooms of purpose and, you know, every bit of space is used. But you have, again, large areas where they have more than just a driver kit, but they've got these specialist bits of kit packaged up, ready to tackle individual jobs.
A flurry of more announcements and potentially penalties from race control. So the first of them is that the 901 Porsche, which is third in Cup 2 for Patrick Grutter, is going to have to take a penalty lap. Now, this is not rallycross, as in you have to do a joker lap, but there is a separate route that you'll have to take in the Mercedes arena for one lap, and that is through the dotted bay, which is effectively the driver's right outside bit. There's a perfect opportunity to see it, in fact. So coming out of turn 1, see that dotted line, which means that if you drive through that lane, the outer lane, that is therefore considered a penalty lap, and it's an opportunity to slow somebody down who has been pinged for a relatively small-scale infringement. It was an unsafe pit release, so that means Patrick Grutter's going to have to drive through that part of the racetrack, which is not the ideal racing line. Also, the 50 Equipe Vitesse Audi has been potentially caught speeding in the pit lane. That's currently under investigation, and having fallen below a minimum pit stop time for the 906 car, a 5-second stop-and-go penalty. 906 being another Cup 2 Porsche, this time for the Van Ramshorst driver, a team with no name. They are 9th in Cup 2. But the most significant of those is the third-placed Porsche. Now, how close is Patrick Grutter to the next Cup 2 car? There's only 5 and a bit seconds between them, although Jan-Jaap van Roem has just made a stop in the Max Cruiser racing car. So that's not going to be quite as close as it was. Grutter may have already taken that penalty, because I noticed that first sector is about 4 or 5 seconds slower than it would, well, mind you, I'm comparing it to a GT car, so won't say that that's been served quite yet. You'll get more than one chance to do it.
I mentioned sunshine. Please pretend I didn't, because it certainly seems to have gone away for now on the start-finish straight. In the background there is blue sky, but the important thing for all the crews, it's remaining dry. We've got an hour and 20 minutes or so remaining in this 4-hour race. That's the standard format and length for the Nürburgring Langstrecken series, and the gap between first and second has actually come down. It was 1 minute and 8 seconds, but a better lap last time round for Vincent Cole. But yes, he's closing a bit on Chris Lallam, the Emil Frey Racing Ferrari that he took over from Max Verstappen. But on this lap, it's like Lallam's gone, okay, I've got the measure of this. More to the point, though, we've got so many slow zones and wave yellow flag areas that it is making it difficult for drivers to put in really quick laps. And the fact is, oh right, okay, another lap completed. That means 19 laps on the board. But the lap that Chris Lallam has just done is 8 minutes 29.2 seconds, and that is the best, getting on towards 37 seconds slower than the best lap that car has done. That is the effect, quite simply, of a lot of yellow zones around the circuit. You have to back it off. And in fact, many a time in the Nürburgring Langstrecken series, you might have a race with very, very few incidents, but just enough to mean you almost have no laps without a yellow flag somewhere slowing your progress. But the golden standard, 51.5, was set early in this race in the first stint by Max Verstappen. The car still out front by more than a minute, but the team that took victory last time out, the Haupt Racing team with their Mustangs, sitting there in second and third. But, you know, you're not, surely, with an hour and 17 minutes or so remaining in this race, going to claw back what you've already lost, and that is over a minute. Sounds good, though.
It certainly does. Looks great on paper if it can stay in that margin, but one car out there to prevent that from happening is certainly Vincent Cole in his number 6 Haupt Racing Team Ford Mustang. The other one is Dennis Fetzer in the 9 car with that keyboard wrapped livery down both sides of the car. It's like a QWERTY keyboard, which is an addition to the otherwise close to the livery of the number 6, but it's a helpful addition so we can tell the two cars apart from a distance. They are running 2nd and 3rd. How's the Huber Motorsport car doing? That's a bit further down in 15th position, but 4th in the SP9 AMS, and has at the wheel Hans Wehrmann currently, having taken over from Joachim Tyson. Thomas Kiefer is in that lineup as well. As now the two Ferraris have found one another. Now, of course, they're not on the same lap, but Chris Lullum is trying to get by Klaus Aberlan, and Aberlan actually gives him a lot of racing room around the outside at the bottom of the foxhole, heading towards Adenauer Forst now, and that could have been far more awkward than perhaps Chris Lullum was thinking it might be. One fellow Ferrari driver looking out for another.
Yeah, it could certainly have been very good for the Ferrari parts department, but anyhow, you know, certainly Klaus Aberlan's been racing the Nordschleife for a very long time. The last thing he would want to do is interrupt fellow Ferrari drivers. He pulled out the way very nicely, but just get this, at this point, Klaus Aberlan, 65 years old, is getting towards the end of his 3rd hour in the race. Is he going to do the whole thing solo? Well, he might have to, because there are no teammates entered in his car, whereas our race-leading car, 2 hours completed by Max Verstappen in that. That gave a big lead of just over a minute before he handed over to Chris Lullum. Chris Lullum in for this stint, but there's still one more stint to come. We don't know if Max fancies getting back in or if he's going to go, hey, let's do this 50-50. But either way, it's going to take something quite enormous for them not to head on to this victory. Worth pointing out, of course, in the early part of the season, the entry list is sort of more packed at the top end. A lot of people only do the first half of the season, then do the Nürburgring 24 hours. That will be in the back of Max's mind. You know, maybe it's not such a difficult race to win today, but all you can do is do what you can do. And the fact his car is more than a minute clear, being driven very nicely now by Chris Lullum, you know, he'll go away saying, well, if the others were there, I reckon we would have still beaten them. That's the sort of confidence you need. And as a multiple world champion, that's the sort of confidence he carries. You can be sure of that.
Sie sagen, es ist nur ein Auto, aber wir sagen, es ist Herzblut, Schweiß und Perfektion. Denn wenn du schraubst, dann zählt jeder Millimeter. Dann bist du in deinem Element. Du willst mehr als nur fahren. Du willst es fühlen. Die volle Kontrolle. Eine optimale Straßenlage. Wir wissen genau, was dich antreibt. Denn wir teilen die gleiche Leidenschaft. Egal ob auf der Straße oder auf der Rennstrecke. Wir sind immer an deiner Seite. Wir sind H&R. Offizieller Partner der Nürburgring Langstreckenserie.
Liebe Fans,
Lovely fans.
besucht uns auf unseren Social Media Kanälen,
Follow us.
Auf Facebook, Instagram.
YouTube und TikTok.
Willkommen bei der NLS.
Network of channels. It's another edition of the ADAC Barbarossa Price. Johnny Palmer and Bruce Jones enjoying a bit of sunshine now at the Nürburgring, heading down towards Breitscheid and the lowest part of the circuit. Bergwerk is the next significant corner for the Mühlner Motorsport car, which is the Arne Hofmeister example, I fancy, that leads Cup 2 with some pressure on, because just 30-odd seconds, 34 seconds back down the road is Tobias Müller. He did an 8:42 last time around, so that was about 4 seconds faster than the Hofmeister 921 car. But with so much caution here, there and everywhere, there are local yellows at Kesselchen. There's a code 60 on the entry to the carousel, and that's precisely where Arne Hofmeister is arriving now. So he needs to be showing that he's down to the 60 kilometers per hour. And that is because, well, an intervention vehicle sits ahead of an incident that involves one car, and that is I was going to say it was one of the Mustangs.
It looks like a Mustang, but it's not. I can't work out what it is. Right, okay, the car is parked against the barriers, 2/3 of the way around the carousel, that famous bank corner.
It's BMW, isn't it?
It's a BMW, but actually does look Ford livery, doesn't it? It's white and blue, but it's parked against the barriers there. And of course, luckily, the driver's side is the side he could open the door. The other side's against the barrier. The driver appears to be out and over the barriers. I can't see any particular damage, but clearly there's been contact. There is fluid leaking down the banking. Drivers are largely on a concrete strip, which is right around the bottom of the corner, and about 3 times as the width of that strip is the tarmac on the upper edge. But clearly someone's gone in the BMW's gone into that dip, risen up, sort of lost the battle against the forces of gravity, and gone up the hill and gone into the barriers. But certainly the drivers are all being protected just before the entrance to carousel. There's a course vehicle parked sort of diagonally across the tarmac strip, saying if you're coming into this corner, go low, go on the concrete. There's another course vehicle up in front of the stricken BMW, one tucked in behind. The driver is out, but for the drivers coming around, okay, it's a debated pace, but there's that run of liquid coming down from the BMW just across the corner, just past the halfway point, leaking down on them. But let's hope that can be cleared up. But yet another lap on which any of the drivers finding will not be setting a super quick time. And at the moment, they're lapping, last time around, almost precisely, the front-running cars, almost precisely 1 minute slower than the best time in this race set by Max Verstappen. His car now in the hands of Chris Lallam, and Chris doing the best job he possibly can, but these slow zones and wave yellows are really making it hard for the drivers to carry on. But you race what's in front of you. If it's hitting you, you hope it's hitting your rivals as well, so it's all sort of balanced out. But in terms of being able to carry your maximum flow, you have to say it's been a very difficult race for that. And ironically, many a time we've commentated here where there've been almost snow, almost ice. They don't go racing in either, but we've had really cold, dreadfully wet conditions. And you sometimes, in those events, have fewer yellow flags than we have today. Sometimes people just push a little closer to the edge when things are all dry, or maybe they've just been really competitive batches of cars where people are having a 2 or 3 car battle and someone has just gone off. But anyhow, we'll wait for the carousel to be cleared up, but it does mean for now we're not going to get any quick laps at all.
Well, that useful bit of talking from you has enabled me to check that it is Michael Bailey, who is the Australian bronze racer in the Hoffer Racing by Bonk Motorsport BMW, number 189, who has found the fence, I'm afraid. So travelled a long way to be with us in Germany, and could well be his first action on the Nürburgring Nordschleife. He might have experienced 1 or 2 races earlier on in the year, this year, but has come from GT World Challenge Australia, is that?
Yeah, he did a handful of those, but I wonder if he's done a Bathurst 12, because that's a obviously fantastic race down in his neck of the woods, and it does go through the woods as well, doesn't it? But start of the year, that's a race that's grown in stature, and of course you've got the Bathurst 1000 later on in the year, which isn't a multi-class race, but you know, he won't be a stranger to racing with barriers close to the edge with lots of topography, but you know, Nürburgring is something else. But many a time you end up with someone else having helped you into your particular situation. But either way, frustrating to not get all the racing laps you wanted, but I'm sure once you've tried this, you'll be coming back again. So Michael Bailey meets the barriers, or his car does, but hopefully that will be rectified and he can maybe come out in that final round.
Yeah, hopefully he's okay as well. That BMW likely to be left-hand drive, so at least it was on the opposite side of the car from his position within it. Here is the Cup 2 race leader, Arne Hofmeister, and whether this is just cleanly out of fuel or the team have thought, well, there's so much of the racetrack affected by yellows, it's not a bad idea to pit at this point. Still too far out. Well, having said that, actually, we are within the final 70 minutes of the race, so this is where the rule changes, isn't it? And the perspective to the end of the race, rather than the laps you've just done on the stint into this stop, switches, and you've got a clever little table.
You need very good eyesight to read it. Can I explain my table at the top? It says 69 minutes to the end of the race. If you pit then, which you've just passed that moment, your pit stop will be 357 seconds. So that's the best part of 6 minutes. If perchance you stop with only 36 remaining, it's 270 seconds. Okay. So it's a huge swing, 87 seconds difference. Mind you, you're not so likely to be stopping with only 36 minutes remaining in the race, because it means you'd have had to do a super long stint earlier in the race. But let's say you come in at about 60 minutes to go, so in a few minutes time, your pit stop will be 24 seconds fewer, so 9 minutes earlier, or one lap. Mind you, with this slightly abated pace at the moment because of all the slow zones around the circuit, you know, you can gauge, but it's all the timing. And actually, if you can do your pit stop on a lap when there are lots of slow zones, you may actually have a gift if you come back out and those are cleared, and suddenly you're racing again when it's green. So many elements to include in all the reckoning, but you know, as if the circuit isn't tricky enough on its own right, hey? But that's the challenge.
Well, the numbers may differ through the different categories, but each team is given their own sheet, and they will have to do the calculation correct. And it changes every single minute, does it not, to the end, or is it every 2 minutes? No, 69, 68, 67.
Oh, every minute, yeah.
It is every minute, and those numbers change. Those are the figures for SP9 and other of the quicker classes, so I'm sure that Cup 2 get their own document, and the numbers are probably very, very similar. But the closer you can pit to the end of the race, the quicker the stop, because obviously the less fuel you will need to get you to the end. So again, it's meant to be an equalisation tool. The fuel is still going in right now. The teams do get to a phase, though, if they come in, let's say, with one lap to go to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they're almost having to do everything as quickly as possible and forgetting about the clock, because the clock will run out of time way before they've done the fueling. And then you really do see what the teams are made of, particularly towards the end of a Nürburgring 24 hours. If a car needs a splash, you can really easily get into a comfort zone, I would imagine, of thinking, well, we've got way too much more time than we need, so we don't have to hurry. And then all of a sudden, in the closing stages, when you do have to do a quick pit stop for real, it's about remembering what you've got to do and in what order. So that will really put the pressure on. The Müllner Motorsport guys, though, as you would expect for a team this experienced, have turned the 921 car around very speedily indeed, and it will rejoin the race. Müllner Motorsport based just up the road from Spa-Francorchamps, along from Stavelot Corner, I think it is, driving away along the old circuit, and they're just up there on the left. Lots of cars in this race, at least 3, possibly more. As now, a bit tight going into the cut through for one of the middle order cars. That could have been absolute disaster on a new set of tyres. And remember, tyres don't only get you through the corner, but they're also affecting the braking ability as well. And I'm sure just a few extra inches were needed to be found on the brake pedal, pushing that little bit harder.
But to do damage to your tyres, if he'd flat spotted the tyres there, going up on the, it was a production class Hyundai, minding its own business. It didn't leave much of a gap up the inside. But so, say you flat spotted your tyres, you haven't even got off the Grand Prix circuit, and the rest of this stint, which will be an hour, we've got an hour and 2 minutes left in this race, could be unpleasant. So these things, there is that natural element you want to press on as soon as you get out of the pit stops. But and ironically, it was only one car in front of him, not a gaggle of cars. But that Muller Motorsport Porsche, suddenly the driver must be going, oh, hold on, I haven't even. It's more respectable to crash on the Nordschleife. You know.
It's true, yeah, and out of basic visibility of the team as well. I mean, yes, okay, you might have the helicopter cam framing you, but sometimes an incident may happen on the Nordschleife totally away from the cameras. You can say, well, I couldn't have done anything about it. I was surrounded by cars. Probably went off entirely on his own, but you can make up a story. You can't do that on the Grand Prix track. What I'm trying to work out is whether this is still Arne Hofmeister, or have we gone back to someone like Tim Scheerbaert in 9-2-1. Scheerbaert started the race, but I'm not getting a current driver flashing up.
Saying David Yarn on mine. I think just
okay.
May have flipped over. That's Yarn's second stint then, if that's the case. Is it not? Right, I'm just having a little think at the moment. Chris Lullen, this is his first appearance on the Nürburgring Nordschleife. He is now starting to drop Vincent Kolb, and it is not Vincent's first appearance on the Nordschleife. No. So Emil Frey Racing clearly got a very, very good handle on its Ferrari here, the 296 GT3, running on Michelin tyres. The Hout Racing team are running, did we not say, on Yokohama? Maybe that is part of the difference today. Maybe the conditions are just more Michelin favoured than they are Yokohama. Maybe the 296 is just in better form, but I think we're seeing a remarkable drive from Chris Lullen. Yes, it's hard to gauge his actual pace. You can only gauge it relative to the car that's giving chase. And Vincent Kolb knows this circuit really well. The Ford Mustang GT3, a winner last time out in this championship, NLS 8. But he's dropping it bit by bit. But, oh, now suddenly we're starting to see generally green flag around the circuit. I think we've just got another moment at the exit of the carousel. Oh, yes, we have. Yellow flag. That may just be the recovery of that BMW that Michael Bailey had parked up against the barriers there. Hopefully that will go clear all over again. And then we can, you know, we always want to see the natural pace of these cars and what the drivers are doing. But it is a race of unusual number of moments where elements at the side of the track just need to be cleared up. They may not be serious. It might just take a little longer than planned. There may be barrier repairs. Those are normally the long ones. But it's also making sure that if a fluid has been dropped, as we saw at the carousel, the marshals have a little chance to put a bit of quick dry down on that, because the last place you want to be getting things wrong is somewhere like the carousel. Slip at the bottom, you go straight up into the barriers at the top. Such an incredibly tight corner. It's more than 180 degrees, about 190 degrees as it banks to the left, and then immediately as the drivers come out of that, they've got to sort themselves out for the sequence that follows. And you know, it is a very difficult circuit, however you consider it.
My one opportunity per race to mention Hedvigshoer, which I always like doing, because that is now affected by yellow flags. Only very briefly, because Marshall Post 153, 15 seconds later, turns green. Again, is that to do with a recovery wagon, if you like, one of the HGVs that is sent out to pick cars up and then take them to a safe location? Is that now working its way through the areas around Wipperman and Hedvigshoer? Stylestrecker is clear, as is the route into the carousel. So it sounds like the Michael Bailey car has been retrieved and now may be being taken to the nearby car park.
Yeah, you get this rolling run of different marshals posts, and if where the yellow flag is shown and as the number keeps on rising, it shows the rescue vehicle is getting to the closest point at which the car can be tucked away to safety. A lot of points around the circuit, there is no space available for that, but yeah, hopefully that will get to that soon. It's gone through Eschbach as well, and it seems crazy, you know, mentioning Marshall Post 162. There's an indication of how many we have. I think we get to just over 200 if you get up towards Hohenrhein and Tiergarten at the end of this lengthy 25-kilometre lap. Right, lap after lap. Still getting Emil Frey Racing's Ferrari in the lead. This is the car that Max Verstappen has come here to race. His first chance to race at the top class. He did a trial race to get his ring permit last time out out in the LLS, another free weekend, comes here and put in a masterclass, gained in the first half of this Ferrari race just over a minute of advantage, and his teammate Chris Lullum is now starting to stretch his legs. He's been slightly interrupted by all these yellow flag patches around the circuit, but he's proved that when the track comes clear, he's got really, really good pace. He's been racing the car all year, but has been racing on Pirelli tyres in the GT World Challenge, but now getting used to the Michelins as well, and getting used to this incredible circuit.
Another long stop for the number 54 Dynamic GT Porsche. That was very nearly 14 minutes for Bastian Boos in the pit lane. They've been fighting mechanical problems from the off. And also 2 more messages from race control referring to the Huber Motorsport Porsche number 25, which failed to manage double yellows potentially, so that's under investigation. And it's the same infringement for 901. I tell you, Patrick Grutter cannot buy any luck at the moment. That's the second time that the 901 car is in potentially hot water. They're trying to get a podium in Cup 2, but it could be very difficult if there's a second penalty incoming.
Just been given sides looking forward from Chris Lullum's windscreen. He's got a Porsche right over his nose, but good news is they put the marshals up at the carousel, put a lot of quick dry down on the circuit. Remember that BMW that hit the barriers dropped a lot of fluid. It was running down the inside of that bank corner, but they haven't stinted on putting quick dry out. I reckon several sack loads down there, but so that's good news. Such a tricky corner, you don't want it to be extra slippery. And now Chris Lullum. First it was the rolling yellow flags period. Now he seems to have a run of traffic up across the nose of his race-leading Ferrari. It's BMW just in the way. He's looking left, he's looking right. Have you seen me? Yes, you have. Thank you very much. Down the inside he goes. I think that was the GT racing car. May well have been, and he picked it off. That was the all-female crew. And then suddenly, a Cup 2 Porsche around the outside, 2 wheels up over the curbing, very close to the sand on the exit of the circuit there. Grass had run out, but again, this is the nature of the Nürburgring Nordschleife for Johnny. You're in the quickest car in the field. You've got to work your way through traffic. You talk about people doing sim racing. Of course, Chris Lullum's a superstar in that. But one of the best fun bits when you're doing a sim race is overtaking cars from other classes, and this is what he's doing in abundance. He'll make more overtaking manoeuvres in 1 lap than he will in the rest of the season when he's running in the GT World Challenge. That is how busy it is.
Apologies, because my eyes have been in all sorts of different places. Have you mentioned the gap coming down considerably at the head of the order?
I didn't, because it had come down slightly, and then it settled, and the last lap alone, suddenly, best part of 30 seconds. We talked about gifts coming and prizes being taken away, and still with wave yellows around the circuit, suddenly it's fallen in the lap of the chasing Vincent Kolb, down to 42 seconds between first and second.
Well, like I said, about an hour or so ago, it's not over. There were 2 hours and 20 minutes at that point, I remember, and the lead was well over a minute. Chris Lullum just needs to, well, almost not be told. I'm sure the team are keeping him up to date with the gap back to the second place car of Vincent Kolb. There is the number 6 car just creeping by the Klaus Aberlan Fricadelli Racing Ferrari 296,
which is much slower. Now,
yes.
I don't know if it's suddenly got a problem, but or else maybe, well, Klaus has every reason. Oh, well, someone's dropped it on the Dottinger. There's debris all over the place. The track drops into a compression, gradually rises before it gets the kink, and drivers need to be signalled to go to their right-hand side of the circuit to go past it, because more than half the circuit has debris. It doesn't look like large body parts. It looks, it's very hard to tell.
It looks like a tyre's gone.
Yeah,
somehow.
I think so. There's lots of different elements of debris out on the circuit, and the 2 Mustangs literally nose to tail now, and that means the gap has come down considerably for Dennis Fetzer. So whatever advantage in terms of the going to Vincent Kolb versus the race leading car, the yellow zones have cleared, and the second place of those Mustangs in third place overall is not only alongside, going past.
Yeah. There was a question in my mind as to whether they'd be allowed to overtake there, but I'm sure it's just the yellow and red striped flags indicating a change of surface, indicating debris on the road, but they were 2 abreast, and you're right, that Dennis Fetzer's now in front of Vincent Kolb.
No, I'm not.
Oh.
It was Kolb going back past, because Kolb was the one with the... Hold on, let's just double check. Kolb was... No, sorry. The one with the QWERTY image was the sister car, beg your pardon. So
yes.
It's definitely...
But I think that was arranged because, well, no, mind you, Fetzer could have pitted. Fetzer was due in. Now, there is a car with fluid pouring off it. Is that Fetzer's? Ford. It can't have got to the team that quickly, surely. No, it's not. That's a VW Golf, not a Golf. No, it might be a Golf, actually. But yes, I just wondered whether because one car needed to pit, then they switched them around, but the wrong car was ahead, so that doesn't work. That doesn't compute. Anyway, Fetzer came into the pits. This should be the number 9's Ford Mustang's final stop of the race, whereas the Kolb car can stay out. And looking for the gap again.
Well, it came down between them to just 6 seconds.
Between the two Fords,
between the two Fords. The gap to the race lead, we'll have to wait for it to get to the next timing sector but remember that came down to just under 42 seconds, which is still an enormous amount with an hour of racing and slightly less, just over 50 minutes of racing. Final round of pit stops should be coming up this next time around. The end of lap 23 is when we expect the Verstappen.com racing Ferrari to come in, sitting on a 42-second lead. But just remember, it went out the best part of a minute and 10 seconds, so it's really come down. But that was a gift wrapped the Hout Racing team. Clearly, Vincent Kolb giving chase, but not really actually gaining ground, if anything, slightly losing it. And then clearly a slow zone that was cleared allowed the second-place Mustang to close in. Not that much, but it closed in by 20 seconds. That sounds a bit counterculture to say it's not much, but that's because the margin was so great. That's a very, very comfortable cushion.
Well, it was just about a 30-second gain for Kolb's car. It was even more than that for Fetzer when he did an 8:28 on the previous lap. And the race leader, a 9:02. Not because that was a duff lap from Chris Lullum. It's because he was encountering so much yellow on lap 21. Still waiting for these splits to appear, but on lap 21, it was the Aston Martin pitted behind them, and Anders Buchart brought that car in for Valkenhorst Motorsport. So they have now chalked up 21 laps, but they all dive into the pit lane. And remember, the top 4 cars still owe us their latest and what will probably be final stops in this ninth race of the season. NLS 9, the 57th edition of the ADAC Barbarossa Prize. And 48.8 seconds, in fact, the gap as the cars began this lap between Lullum and Kolb. That was the end of lap 22, so we're on to lap 23 now. And Verstappen came in at the end of lap 15 to hand over to Chris Lullum, which means that he can complete one more lap. So he's begun his 23rd, or the car's 23rd lap, and should therefore be into pit road at the end of this one with about 44 minutes or so maybe still on the clock. But I'm expecting both the Ferrari and the Kolb Mustang in at the same time, so there shouldn't be a gain for either car. They will have to be in the pit lane for the same amount of time. No, having said that, the Ferrari's going to be pitting slightly ahead and therefore further out from the checkered flag. So there might be a very small opportunity for the Ford Mustang to gain, purely because it's 48 seconds further down the road.
OK, let's just pretend it's a minute. The difference between minute 1 and minute 2, effectively, is about 2.5 seconds. OK. So it's a gift, but not that much of a gift, because anyhow, it may not be there. If it's under a minute, it won't be any gain at all. So, but the later you pit, the closer to the 4-hour mark at the end of this race, the shorter your pit stop shall be. However, it's been a phenomenal run from ML Racing with their Ferrari. First by Max Verstappen, who actually largely had uninterrupted laps, but the yellows have been coming thick and fast as incidents have been cleared up. So Chris Lullum has definitely had his hand stayed somewhat. But will he stay in for the final stint of the race? Stint number 4 in this 4-hour race. The 3rd pit stop coming up at the end of this lap. And just looking at the timing splits around the circuit, suddenly it's settled down again, and Chris Lullum is pulling further clear. Yeah, 48 seconds clear, and just waiting for them to dive into the pits at the end of what will be lap 23. So it's been a fairly clean race, but it's just the pace has been abated for a long time by these yellow flags at various points around the circuit. And just worth reiterating, it's there aren't many gaps in the barriers in this circuit of nearly 172 corners, and so if a car is being rescued and needs to be towed clear, it needs to get to the next point with a break in the barriers, and that can lead to long periods where the drivers coming up behind have to back off their pace with rescue vehicles doing their jobs.
Also on that lap, into the pit lane was Ben Leuchter for Max Cruiser Racing, as the various shards of what could be just plastic, but the most awkward thing is that that's carbon fibre and could easily slice a tyre. So a couple of marshals are now out on the racetrack at the Dottinger Hoor, ensuring that those bits are all retrieved. A bit of a concern is that one of the Mustangs ran right through it, but if it was Fetzer's car, well, he's pitted straight away because he needed fuel, and they no doubt gave him a new set of tyres anyway, so he can instantly forget that.
Yeah, Vincent Kolb seems to be running at fairly decent pace in the other car, being chased by the bright yellow Lamborghini at the moment, and that's had a decent run, and that's car number 786, Christoph Breuer, back on board. I'm just double checking that has yeah, that's served its third pit stop. That's why Breuer's back on board, whereas the Mustang is about to come in at the end of this lap. But the way Breuer's attacking means that, well, I think it's fresh tyres, actually, familiarity, but he's all over the tail of the white Mustang with the two blue stripes, running effectively the national racing colours of United States. Of course, you think back to the 1950s and Cunningham and other, coming to Le Mans and trying to wave the American flag and all the others. I think it's great. I love a national livery.
Yeah, and what was the national livery of?
Don't say Egypt. I think it was Primrose.
No, of Germany, because I think the Mercedes.
It's white.
Yeah, it is also white, isn't it?
But people talk
without
about
the
silver
body stripe.
arrows. Yeah, but I mean, effectively, that was the national colour, and Mercedes would run that in the 1920s and 30s. But then once Altoon and Mercedes decided cars were a little lighter without paint, that's when they became silver arrows. But it was a point of differentiation, of course.
Obviously British Racing Green for British cars, or Belgian-run British cars, as this case with the Pro Sport crew, and then the Valkenhorst car, the German outfit, on its Pirelli tyres, running this Aston Martin that had such a good morning here at the Nürburgring, but the 34 car rather has faded a little bit. Now, some of that is to be expected because of its SP9 Pro-Am lineup. It's still leading Pro-Am convincingly, because remember, the nearest rival, the number 8 Audi, has probably been in the wars after the contact early on. The 8 Audi is still circulating, now back in the hands of Selv, but with quite a few new body pieces attached to it that don't necessarily match its current paint scheme. As expected, here's Chris Lulham on the in the pit lane at the end of lap 23 then, and this is perfectly on schedule. The car was handed to him at the end of lap 15.
He's going to stay on board as well. No sign of Max Verstappen. I thought he might come running out saying, I've had so much fun, I want another go. But I think it's absolutely fair, because this is Chris's first race on the Nordschleife in the SP9 class, and useful experience. But coming in will be the best part of 50 seconds, his margin, over the Ford that will come in next from the Hout Racing team. They both have to come on this lap. They can't go any further on their tanks of fuel. And Vincent Kolb will be bringing the number 6 in, just waiting for that to come. But such is the margin of 40 to 50 seconds that this one won't be out of the pits before the Ford arrives, but it certainly will be halfway through its pit stop.
And a quick tear-off, that's the whole of the windscreen shape, which they are able to effectively rip away, and all of the nasty bits of fluid and tyre pickup that go with it. These racing cars don't have any form of washer fluid, because that's just extra weight and the mechanism that would power it. So the very last thing you want to be doing is using the windscreen wipers, unless it's raining, because that will just smear all the gunk which is landed on the front-facing edge of the windscreen. But that is just like a helmet in a single-seater, or open cockpit single-seater, where you would remove the helmet visor tear-off. You can do that on the full screen on some of these cars, and it is a very quick process indeed, but highly efficient. So both cars have arrived on pit lane together. Probably no difference between these two stops. If there is one, it's likely to be about 2, maybe 3 seconds. So the gain will not be huge at all. for the chasing number 6 car. In-laps looked pretty good as well for both Lulham and Cole.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only point you can really find a margin. Of course, these are pro drivers and they will take it right up to the line coming into the pits. Other people haven't got it quite right. We've seen a handful of penalties for those, but there may be a 2.5 second gain in the pit, possibly just by dint of being over a minute behind or into the next minute. It's not the gap between the cars, it's really just how close they are to the end of the race. But as the fuel goes on board the Hout Racing Mustang car number 6, and Vincent Kolb has done a good stint in that, but there's nothing he can do about anything other than just chipping away a little bit here and there from Chris Lulham. But certainly that third stint out of the 4 in this race was very interrupted by yellow flags. And certainly on 1 lap alone, about 20+ seconds were gained by the chasing Mustang, but all it did was take the margin down from just over a minute to just over 40 seconds. And it's opened out a little bit since then. But Chris Lulham now back for his second stint, picking his way around the opening part of the lap. Hasn't yet got to the Grand Prix exit of the Grand Prix circuit, where suddenly the track tightens up. He's into the dip. You go through there, right-hand kink, getting up the hill. So what for years was the Vidal chicane, the left-right flick, and then shortly after that you don't turn right, you turn left and then go out into the Nordschleife. Suddenly you're going over a bridge, over a public road. There is no gap. There are walls on either side, and then you drop down, and then suddenly the track becomes sinuous. Right there, right now. First, the double left-handers. And when a car, we've had this over the years, spins going through the first Sabine Schmidt curves, you can't see it when you're coming in. If the marshals haven't told you, which they will, suddenly there is almost no chance. Talk about threading the eye of the needle. And then one of my favourite parts of the track follows into Hats and back. Just the most sensational place to watch cars. You can be high on the spectator banking. Johnny, you and I have been out there over the years, particularly during the when we're not in the booth on the Nürburgring 24 hours. It is brilliant. And the camps that people set up around the circuit, they're there for days, and the Germans camp very nicely indeed. Lots of ducks there as well. They build castles. They turn up with flatbed trucks. They roll back the side. What's on board? A hot tub, of course, and a dry ice machine, and massive speakers, and best of all, a huge beer fridge. It is just the most primal place to go racing. You think of the infield at the Sebring 24 hours and other places where people go at it big time, but nobody does it better than people attending the Nordschleife for the 24 hours. Just quite phenomenal. Education in itself going around. Oh, and it's a brilliant spot to watch the cars. I almost forgot to mention that.
Well, it's easy to forget because the distraction the other side of the spectator fence is so great. Yeah, how many days out from the Nürburgring 24 hours do they actually start constructing those things? Some of which are made out of pure scaffolding, which have clearly had to be bolted together over a period of days, if not weeks. So mightily impressive. And if you've never been to the N24 in person, we would wholeheartedly recommend that you do, and just get yourself out into the crowd, whether that's the campsite at Brunchen, whether that's the middle portion of the Caracciolo Carousel, where you are literally surrounded by the action, which loops all the way through to the left, and you can witness a car at speed bumping its way through the concrete paving there. But definitely Hats and Back is a highlight as well, and the various different angles that you can witness high-speed action. It seems improbable that cars can actually go through that sequence of twists and turns at the speed they do, and at such close quarters as well. Speaking of which, the number 9 car, now in the hands of Jan Mardenborough, is reaching Adenauer Forst. This is the second of 2 Haupt Racing Team Ford Mustangs then into 3rd position. So the order is restored with Lulham leading, Kolb 2nd and Mardenborough in 3rd, even though they pitted on slightly different laps. Mardenborough a lap before, and of course because he pits about 8 minutes earlier than the other 2, he has now lost a bit of ground. The later you pit, the quicker you can be in the pit lane.
Yeah, so what he gained by that faster first pit stop, faster by regulation, by pitting that first pit stop sooner than his rivals by 1 lap, closed in on them, but he knew, or the team knew, that as soon as that number 9 car came in for its 3rd and final pit stop, what it gained early in the race, it would lose all over again. So it does very much balance out, but then again you've got to factor in where these cars are relative to traffic. Are they likely to be backed up behind a whole other group of cars from other classes that are lapping as fast as they can but simply can't compete with these ones? Will they be delayed? It's such a technical element, but the one thing we haven't had this weekend so far, I'm not even going to cross anything. We're under 40 minutes remaining. We haven't had a strafing of rain, which is no stranger whatsoever to the Eiffel Forest. And you could be 5 kilometres away, 2 kilometres away. It could be dry, but at a point around this 172-turn circuit, you could have your face full of rain. You could have just the biggest dump of rain. And sitting high on the hills, if you've got people up on the pit building looking out over the Eiffel Forest beyond, you can see a very long way, but you can see stuff coming. But the big question is that dark cloud that may have just popped half of its rain down on Spa-Francorchamps and travelled about another 45 minutes to the east. Is it going to pass, or is it going to hit us, or is it going to hit all the circuit, or just some of it? Eternal questions on the Nordschleife. And I tell you what, some of me actually really rather hopes that all weather apps are wiped out, because when teams are watching the whole time, I quite like, from the benefit of the commentary box, the safety of the commentary box, is the surprise of weather. There are no surprises other than the fact it could suddenly be approaching a rainstorm, and it could just miss when you've banked everything on it coming and hitting you. But anyhow, it's the Nürburgring. It happens.
The dream scenario has been reached for Chris Lullum as the race leader in the Emil Frey Racing Red Bull backed Ferrari 296. That is a green racetrack everywhere, so he need not worry now about a caution period that might catch him in the wrong place and doesn't catch his rival. And the sector times for Lullum on his outlap, well, favoured Kolb, the chasing driver, here and there. That might be the slight advantage he got from pitting a minute later, because there was a 5-second difference as it turned out. I actually think Chris Lullum was taking it easy as he rejoined. There was quite a long check in the left-hand door mirror just to make sure that there was no one alongside him. And it was the measured approach. He's now quickened the pace, and through sector 3 is 3 and a bit seconds faster than the chasing Ford Mustang. He can afford not to be fully gung-ho in the final 35 minutes and 30 seconds.
You know, I always think there's that element that if you just back off slightly, that's when you can possibly make mistakes. I think the more experience you have, the more not. But I think in so many sports, if you just think you can slightly underhit a shot or whatever, or, you know, my early days, back off a rugby tackle, that's when you don't quite get committed and you end up being hurt. And it's the same in racing, I'm fairly sure. So I think Chris Lullum will keep going. Yes, if he comes across a gaggle of cars, he can afford to back off a little bit. But, you know, he's shown really good pace. But in every time you've got green flag running, in each of the timing sectors around this circuit, they've got it split into 6 sectors. He's got an advantage. So, yeah, cruise. Well, what's the point? No, don't cruise. Collect. That's the other bit.
Yeah. I suppose if you're aiming for that grey area between full commitment and a rolling lap, let's say, then there are more unknowns, because you haven't necessarily attacked a corner at 75%, let's say, and there's always the possibility of a mistake. I noticed that through sector 4, Vincent Kolb's Ford is not there. It's we've got an Emil Frey Ferrari having triggered sector 4. Mardenborough's been through as well, and there are now yellow flags at Kittelbacher Hohe and Flugplatz. Now, I don't know whether that's because Vincent Kolb is absent in some description, or is he just further back down the road and Mardenborough's got in between them because of his earlier pit stop. But definitely Mardenborough's going to snake his way through. Yeah, no, Mardenborough shouldn't be ahead, because remember he had that longer final pit stop, so what he gained to close to within 20 seconds, actually it kept on closing before it came to Mardenborough. And it got down to about 5 and a bit seconds, and then they dived into the pits. Right, Kolb is there now. He's come through, and I think still in the right place. So that's again a little bit of a timing glitch. It might be that the transponder reading at the end of sector 4 wasn't instantaneous, but Kolb should still be in second place, and therefore no late drama, at least until now, for the 2 Ford Mustangs who are on course to be completing the podium with the Ferrari of Max Verstappen and Chris Lullum.
It'd be really interesting to know how many people are watching globally who wouldn't otherwise be watching, having caught the fever for NLS by watching Max Verstappen compete to get his ring license. But obviously this is far more exciting, starting in the top class. Didn't stay second for third for long, did he? Up into second before he got to the first corner, up into first before they got to the first corner, and thereafter the Emil Frey Racing, Verstappen.com Ferrari has just pulled clear, muscled its way free of the action. But the main point is the final pit stop has been done. A 4-hour race, 3 pit stops, tick them off. But every challenge thrown its way has been met by Max Verstappen first, then Chris Lullum. Looking to see if there are any changes. Right, second place is still the number 9, but it's still listed as number 9 ahead of, that's Mardenborough.
So that is correct.
Okay, it is correct. Okay, so what happened? Remember, just before the pit stop, there was a big gain on the number 6 Vincent Kolb-driven Mustang on the race-leading Ferrari. 20 seconds dropped into his lap by dint of a yellow section of the track being cleared up before the chasing Mustang got in. But at the same time, an equivalent margin, if not more, was gained by the sister car. And now Jan Mardenborough, he took it over. He didn't take the lead on the track before the pit stop because he wasn't driving, but his car didn't on the track. It pitted a lap earlier, so it came in after 22 laps. And should have been a longer pit stop, but it had closed right into 5.5 seconds before those pit stops. Just taking a look at lap times around the circuit. I need a few more moments until that comes through, but Mardenborough looks so he's building very nicely on the work. It was largely done by Dennis Fetzer. Fetzer was the one that got the gift of the yellow flag area clearing up before him. But I was just thinking, of course, with the longer pit stop, the number 9 out-racing Mustang would lose ground, but it gained a lot beforehand. But I'm just trying to just quickly cut through the various sectors and work out, was there a really unkind, cruel sector for the Vincent Kolb Mustang? Doesn't appear to have been.
Well, I mean, part of the reason that Jan has hoovered up some of that ground that separated he and Chris Lullum is that he did an 8:01. That was only 10 seconds away from Max Verstappen's best effort. But the Ford Mustangs haven't been anywhere close to a 7:51. 7:56 is the best Mustang time, which came from the number 6 sister car. But Mardenborough's just on an 8:01.4. Plus, that was all that time gained just before the pit stop as well. And whether there was an issue on the outlap, perhaps, for the Vincent Kolb car. Meantime, there is a stranded car towards the end of the Grand Prix track, and this is the Schubert Motorsports car that we've spoken about a couple of times before, the only BMW M2 CS in the entry, CS racing car, and it has stopped just after the high-speed chicane that then leads everybody towards Sabine Schmidt's curve, but car 882 hasn't quite made it that far. And that is for either Stefan von Zabienski or family member Michael. Torsten Schubert is also in the lineup as well. To say the only car entered into the BMW M2 CS class. Does exactly what it says on the tin, that particular category.
Damaged on the run to the first corner, the Walkenhorst Motorsport pole qualifying Aston Martin. We're talking about an 8-minute 1-second lap for Jan Mardenborough in second place, somewhat further down in 5th after delays for repairs. 7 minutes 57 for Christian Cronje, the starting driver, the driver who took pole position. His next target, he's leading the SP9 Pro class, is the alternative technology Audi of Max Cruz Racing with Benjamin Leuchter, their start driver, back on board. He's been lapping nicely too, but as I say that, no, but I think we could see the Aston Martin going back up the order. That's car number 34. I'm just waiting to get the next timing interval between the pair of them so I can work out the gap between them. But what I can tell you is the gap between first and second is just under 24 seconds. So it has been a swing away from Emil Frey Racing, but what's left on the clock? Under half an hour remains in this race until we get to the 4-hour mark, and then it's a question of how many minutes after that Chris Lullum comes through in the lead of the race, or indeed will it be him? We thought for so long in this race it was a done deal. The Emil Frey Racing Ferrari team, started by Max Verstappen, built a lead of a minute and 10 seconds, but since then it's been coming down. I think incident has been an element within that, but certainly the gift of the yellow flag that's being cleared up before the chasing cars came through really closed the margin down.
The area around the Vidal chicane is now hampered by code 60 because of the number 882 BMW stuck on the grass to driver's right as everybody approaches the end of the Grand Prix track for von Zabienski. So the Schubert Motorsport car looking like it's going to have to be recovered before that can go green again. 2:18.4 is slow through the third sector, but everybody's doing 2:18s. So that tells us again that there's more code 60 potentially. Certainly yellow flags in the middle sector of the 3. And that is not, well, the reason for that is not the BMW that we've already spoken. Oh, that's a different BMW, mind
Yeah,
you.
it's 885, I think,
Oh, okay.
which we've talked about before in this race. That's another Schubert Motorsport car.
Yeah.
It's same livery, the black and white split. That's Giuliano Holtzum, Sandra Holtzum, and Swedish driver Alfred Nilsson. So yeah, it's quite confusing when one team loses a couple of cars with the same livery in the space of a couple of minutes. A thunderclap for them, unfortunately, but not a good one. Right, just waiting. Muller, that's Marshall's Post 120. Don't want to brag, but lots of those around the course of the circuit. But so effectively halfway round. So that's a yellow flag, and that's now been cleared up. So whatever was there is no longer a problem. But waiting for everything to clear up. But still, the code 60 at the Vidal chicane. That's just before the drivers turn left and left again to go onto the Nordschleife part of this circuit.
So there are actually 2 M2 CSs. I think I've been saying for much of the race it's only the one, but Schubert have rocked up at the Nürburgring this weekend with 2 identical examples, 882 and 885. And it looks like at the moment they're going to struggle to get either car to the finish because, okay, they may be recovered to a safe location, but can they be fixed in the remaining 26 minutes, particularly if they are a long, long way from home? That wasn't the case with the 882, and it might be that that can be on a tow rope and straight into the pit lane very, very shortly. But unfortunately for 885, on the run down towards Arenberg, out of Schwedenkreuz, and it's going to be really difficult to get that car fixed due to its location, and as I say, the time starting to run through the team's fingers there. Just 25 minutes and 30 seconds still to go. It's going to be a long wait before we find out Chris Lulham's time through sector 4. Not convinced he's quite yet up to full speed again, but Jan Mardenborough's not able to capitalise on this. Klostertal now affected by yellows, as is Stylestrecker. That again smacks as a intervention vehicle towing either some Armco bits or a broken vehicle to a safer location.
Yeah, it's such a tricky thing on this circuit. So few gaps around the course, because the trouble is most of the circuit is actually through the middle of a forest. There aren't any access roads. You've just got certainly in the past, when people have decided they've crashed their car or bike, they just take a shortcut. There aren't actually any shortcuts. You could eventually wander, followed by a bear, no doubt, or a weasel, down to a road around side. But any high-up shots of this circuit, it's just a line of tarmac, not just any line of tarmac, but it's right through the middle of a forest, so it is really tricky. We wouldn't have it any other way. They have been various points where you have opened an access point, a gap in the barriers where cars can be fed back through to be put to a point of safety, but a lot of them aren't connected with roads. Cars can just be left there until after the event, and then they can be rescued. Logistically, you wouldn't plan a circuit like it, but this circuit wasn't planned for these purposes. It was just simply as a racing circuit in the 1920s. Yeah, century old, fantastic.
Lost none of its attraction, the green hell, and the amount of risk that is incorporated into it, the amount of risk that everyone is taking as well to get to the finish. But that's part and parcel of motor racing. That is the adrenaline rush after all. Max Verstappen gets it. Hopefully a whole lot more of you get it after this weekend as well, or maybe even Max's debut a few weeks ago. Let's hope that a few of you now firing posts to @RSL_studio maybe had not even discovered this venue. Or you might have heard of it, but had never actually seen a race around here before, just clocked the badges on the back of people's street cars. Well, I really hope you're fully invested now and want to come back either for the final round of the season or for plenty more races next year. And who knows, Max Verstappen might even be on the entry list of the 2026 edition of the Nürburgring 24 Hours, a race that once again we will have for you live and free. So the 34 Aston Martin of Christian Krognes, he started the race, remember, then the Norwegian got out and allowed some drive time for Matteo Villagomez and Anders Buchart, his teammates. before getting back on board. And that car still on course to win SP9 Pro-Am, 22.5 minutes away from the checker. Kesselchen, code 60. That's going to be very damaging to a quick lap time, and that is, well, a perfect example of is Chris Lulham's route to the end of lap 25. He is a full minute and a bit slower than the best time offered earlier on by Max Verstappen in that same Ferrari.
Right, just talking about people sort of maybe potentially looking at this circuit for the first time, I just want to wind them back to a time very long ago, 1968. Jackie Stewart, Grand Prix should have been under 2 hours. It actually ended up being slightly over. But he won in the fog and the... Imagine this circuit in fog.
Sie sagen, es ist nur ein Auto, aber wir sagen, es ist Herzblut, Schweiß und Perfektion. Denn wenn du schraubst, dann zählt jeder Millimeter. Dann bist du in deinem Element. Du willst mehr als nur fahren. Du willst es fühlen. Die volle Kontrolle. Eine optimale Straßenlage. Wir wissen genau, was dich antreibt. Denn wir teilen die gleiche Leidenschaft. Egal ob auf der Straße oder auf der Rennstrecke. Wir sind immer an deiner Seite. Wir sind H&R. Offizieller Partner der Nürburgring Langstreckenserie.
Faltenreifen. Hol dir jetzt dein eigenes Motorsporterlebnis nach Hause. Dein Online-Shop für Simracing-Hardware und Zubehör. www.simraceshop.de
Liebe Fans,
Lovely fans,
besucht uns auf unseren Social Media Kanälen,
follow us.
Auf Facebook, Instagram.
YouTube und TikTok.
Willkommen bei der NLS.
it's going to be 2 more laps following this one because the clock's counting down, but with lap times anything between 8 and 9 minutes, and it does swing according to yellow flag zones. Left on the clock 18 minutes, so I think we're fairly safe to say by the time this lap has been completed, that will be lap 26, we'll have time for 2 more. But it's been all about Verstappen.com racing today, not just because Max Verstappen is here, but it's because they're dominating this, the 9th round out of 10 for the NLS for 2025. And for Chris Lullam, a learning process. It's learning how to also just cope with incidents where things slows down. The show doesn't go off the road, but you've just got to keep your concentration, your focus, obey every single flag that's waved in front of you, and be aware you're going to have to drop off your pace if an incident is being cleared up. Stay cool, calm, collected, press on again, and after a longer period, also just keep your heat in your tyres and not just attack too soon, put the hammer down if you've got a long run of corners that are in slow zone. Largely today, they've been rolling slow zones, according to a rescue vehicle, moving through to the next point at which it could remove a stricken car. But certainly just another learning process in a driver, Chris Lullam's case, who came from sim racing in 2024, dabbled in radical racing in the UK, but moved up to the GT3 class of racing this year. It's what we call SP9 here in the NLS. That's its nomenclature, but has not just moved to the front, he's done it in immense style, and certainly a huge support from Max Verstappen, who, even if he's on a Grand Prix weekend, tends to be very busy watching every single time the cars are out on the track with Chris Lullam and his regular teammate Thierry Vermeulen. He's on their back, on their case, watching, and now this weekend taking part. So the boss is in the house.
Just getting word from race control that the code 60 at Kesselchen will remain in place until the end of the race. So either that's barrier damage, it's most likely to be that actually, and rather than affect or compromise the run through Kesselchen anymore by having circuit vehicles on a narrow piece of racetrack there, better to just say, well, we'll keep this code 60 in place. We will protect the barriers if necessary, but leave it as that because it's probably a fair length of Armco that needs replacing. You never have a small off at Klostertal Kesselchen due to the approach speed. Maybe even both sides of the road have been dinged with the barrier so close to the edge of the circuit. And also a potential noise violation now for the SP8T car that has fallen to second place, but it was the long-time race leader, number 191. That is just a first noise violation, so I believe it's just a warning. But obviously, if the car's caught doing that in the remaining 15 minutes again, then there might be penalties heading the way of the Pro Sport Racing Aston Martin. SP8T is actually now led by 187, which is a BMW from the FK Performance crew, and Mijatovic doing the driving there. So that is Ranko Mijatovic, joined by Nick Wustenhagen, as those are so often driving partners. And 187 has needed to cut down a substantial lead at about half distance to now be in front in SP8T. But it's still a relatively small margin. I'll make it about 8 seconds that separate that top two.
Right, we've got a bit of a battle on, because the battle for third place, we've had Vincent Cole falling away in the second of the Mustangs. It was one that ran second for a very long time, started by Frank Stippler, but he's now, well, at the start of the lap, he was 5 and a bit seconds clear of the 80 alternative fuel class Max Cruz Racing Audi, but Benjamin Leuchter is catching him big time, just going over the first second of the Sabine Schmitz curves, and clear line of sight. I reckon we're only about 2.5 seconds maximum between these cars. The Ford in third place and the chasing Audi in fourth, but catching. Max Cruz Racing is their first time running with a GT3 class car, but it's running not in the main class, but in the alternative technology class, and doing things differently in terms of its fueling, but definitely through the sweepers of Hatzenbag closing in. Hey, we thought this race was over. Nah, not yet. Maybe for the lead of the race, because of the 28-29 second margin, it's looking pretty comfortable indeed for Chris Lullam and Verstappen.com Racing. But Ford looking set for a 2-3 result, maybe 2-4. Well, we'll find out.
Krognes leading Pro-Am in SP9. The Cup 2 fight has calmed down a little bit. It was, well, I remember only about 45 minutes ago, the top two were separated by about half a car length. when it was the 921 and 948 cars at really close quarters, but that's opened up somewhat now in the favour of David Yarn and the Mullner Motorsport car. And you've got Tobias Muller second, and in third place in Cup 2, which is a Pro-Am car, the Grosser SRS Team Zorg Rennsport Porsche. Klaus Aberlan still circulating in 10th place and doing battle with Christoph Breuer. They've got potentially a full lap between them, though. It's a significant margin after a great early run from Renazzo Motorsport's Lamborghini Huracan, which rather set the foundation for a not necessarily an easy second half of the race, but a more comfortable one than the start was. Aberlan has not really put a foot wrong, but might be suffering for the lack of teammate. You've got to think fatigue now is starting to creep in after such a long drive. Even for the full-out pros at Le Mans, there is a rule that says you can't drive for any more than 4 hours in one slug, and certainly Klaus will be feeling it now. I'm not sure whether he's ever done that before as a solo racer.
He was entered last time out just as a solo racer, but I'm trying to remember. I'm not sure he actually got to the finish, but certainly it's a challenge. Mind you, cast your mind back to when certain drivers tried to do the entirety of Le Mans on their own.
Yeah.
Didn't quite work.
23 hours, though, I think had been done. Yeah, Aberlan, even quite recently, has been racing with people like Felipe Fernandez-Larza, who could be busy elsewhere. Vasquez Garcia for K. Kramer Racing is 4th in Cup 2. Still keeping our eyes on the gap, though, from 3rd to 4th. Different categories of cars involved, but if a pass is made by Ben Leuchter, that will change the overall podium order. And here's a chance for Leuchter to really close up the ground. Maybe he could have pushed yet further, because that was only double waved yellows, I think, unless I was missing a speed board as well. No, here's his chance. So he's going to be right on the boot lid now of Vincent Kolb, who couldn't really do a great deal about that. And the Audi thought, well, if you're not going to go as fast as I want to, I'll just close up the distance. And now at this